In this video, we'll discuss what having jowls means in face reading and the lifestyle rhythms to consider when addressing it. Enjoy. In today's face reading tutorial, we're going to be discussing jowls, this area right here. And people will say, that person's pretty jowly or they're getting jowls. And as we age, this area can become more fleshy. It can droop, it can sag. We want to think about face reading and when we're assessing features and, tuning into people's faces that the face is going to wrinkle as we age. Gravity is going to do its work and things will sag over time. There is no getting away from it. There's nothing to be done for it. And part of how we gracefully age in terms of the spirit, the mind, and the body is gracefully surrendering the things of youth. So that's hard for many Americans. Many people struggle with this. They don't have a good relationship with that dynamic. But let's talk about this because while some sagging in the face as we get older is to be expected, the jowls also usually, when this happens, points to a deficiency of some kind. Now, I want to separate this a little bit because there's a term in face reading called money bags, and it talks about the fullness of the cheeks. And I want to make sure this is clear. There's a distinction between these two things. Fleshy cheeks and sagging jowls, two different things. They have a different mechanism, different association. There's some crossover in terms of what they are. But full cheeks relates to the metal element because this area regulates the lungs and relates to the holding of money, sometimes the acquisition of money, and a dialogue with the storing capacity of metal. So I'm not going to get too much into that this time, but I just want to make sure that if you're reading Lillian's book, Face Reading in Chinese Medicine, which I encourage people to get, you can get it on Amazon, there is a distinction between these two things. So let's talk about this from the simple access point. I always bring people back to the geography. Rather than looking at facial features and saying, this means explicitly this about you because the book says so, instead of looking at it like that, I always take people into the space of looking at things from the long view. Get a broader, more symbolic representation. Think in big, broad strokes first. Get sort of that symbolic orientation to the process, and you have a lot more to play with and a lot more to riff off of. And I don't mean pull things out of your ass and make things up. What I mean is when you have big concepts and you know what those symbols mean, you have a much broader capacity to understand what you're dealing with and what that means in relation to the person's life terrain. So if you look at this illustration, which I use many times in my video, you'll see that this area right here, okay, kind of down in this jowl area, that relates to the spleen, okay, this area right here in between the eyes also. Just as a side note too, if we see discolorations or shifts here, it can point to blood sugar regulation and whatnot relating to the spleen. So in any case, right here. Now you'll also see that right here, the jawline relates to the wood element. So if you put a circle around that area, you're looking at the dynamics between earth, which relates to the spleen, and the green, which relates to the wood. Earth and wood. So think about that. And I want to bring up this image here of the 5-element wheel. I couldn't find one that had all of these cycles in it. This one is a little grainy, but it'll do the job. When we look at the 5-element wheel, there is a creation cycle, there's a destruction cycle, there is an overacting cycle, and something called the insulting cycle. 4 different components to the 5-element wheel. They're all important. Most of the time, the creation and destruction cycle is enough to get the job done in terms of general diagnostics. But when we look at the jowl, we have to look at the insulting cycle of the 5 elements. So you'll see, if you look at this chart, that wood, you'll see that green arrow, it says wood destroys earth. The way to think about that in the natural world is a tree trunk penetrates into the ground. It sort of dominates the soil and penetrates and goes into it. The way they think about that is sort of like wood is dominating or destructing the earth a bit, also supporting it, but just think of that image. Now, if you go over to the earth, though, you'll see how it says in that little dotted arrow, it says insults, where the earth energy backs up and starts insulting the wood element. So what this means is when they say insulting, it means just that, like someone hurling an insult at you. Now, insults can hurt our feelings and they can sometimes cut us very deep, but it's not a physical injury. It's not a broken bone or a broken back. But it is insulting and it's the energy backing up and going the other way. So when we see this area over here, we can sort of see that if you take this idea, it's sort of like the earth is insulting the wood. So this is the clean wood right here. And as the flesh here starts to sag, it's the earth kind of going in reverse, sagging and dominating and hiding the wood element. And this is the earth insulting the wood element. So again, this isn't earth-shattering. This isn't something that you have to freak out about and think like, oh God, my life's going to be short and over. But it does point to some things, lifestyle things in particular, that you want to pay attention to. The jowls are a heavily targeted area in the plastic surgery realm. People don't like this area. When it gets saggy like this, they don't like that earth insulting the wood, and they cut it out, and they bring this line back. Oftentimes what we're seeing is that the earth has become deficient. So let's talk about that for a quick minute. The earth element regulates the spleen and the stomach. Now, this area relates to the spleen. The spleen has a very specific function in the body in Chinese medicine, and that is to uphold and to uplift. So when we see sagging anything, what we're looking at is that spleen energetics are dropping a bit. As we age, spleen energetics will drop. But when we see it right here, what it's saying is that the spleen is not upholding the energy. It's not uplifting the body. It's not uplifting the fluids. It's not uplifting the spine. It's not uplifting the energy of the spirit. All those things begin to sag. So if we don't have that uplifting energy happening, that means that the earth has become weak. This area will begin to sag. Part of the way, and one of the best ways that you can bolster earth and support the spleen, is through strength training. The spleen regulates the four limbs, and what that's code for in Chinese medicine is it regulates all of the musculature in the body. So the face is a microsystem of the entire body and of the mind and the spirit. So what this is saying is that the earth is deficient. A lot of times as we age, what happens? We lose anywhere from 3 to 8% of our muscle mass every decade over the age of 40, and then over the age of 60, I think it's actually over the age of 30. And then after 60, that accelerates. So it goes up to like 10 to 12%. And sometimes I've read different numbers, but it goes up more and more. When we lose muscle, when we lose earth, and we start to do that, the body does not metabolize fat or glucose as well as it once did, which is where we start to see the accumulation of flesh and the face getting essentially fatter. So what this is a call to action to is start working out, start strength training, start using the four limbs, really get that body active. And when you do that, you're also going to be using your connective tissue like the ligaments and the tendons, which is regulated by wood. So by strengthening the musculature, and because the ligaments and tendons are connected to that system, right? Muscles, ligaments, tendons, they all kind of blend over and cross over. These two systems begin to get stronger. And what happens when we get into shape? When we start building muscle, we start metabolizing glucose better, we start getting leaner. These areas start to tighten up. So a lot of people don't like this though. They don't want to take the long haul. They want the instant gratification of a simple fix. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to work out hard. And you know what? I can't stop you from doing that. I can encourage you to do that, and I would advocate for that most definitely. Do the long game. You're going to learn more, grow more, and become a better person by doing that. But if you want to cut it out, you can. But you're also kind of killing off the signal that your body is trying to tell you and that your face is hinting at. You need to work on these metrics. You need to get stronger and regulate those things and become healthier. That's really what it boils down to. And if we start working on those things, this area oftentimes leans up and tightens up and the jowls start to go away. So the general approach is lower adipose tissue. Start using the musculature. If we don't, the spleen doesn't uphold, the muscles don't stay strong, and we do not age as well as we could. So again, don't freak out about this area. It's nothing explicitly pathological, but it is definitely an invitation to get stronger and to get healthier. And if you do that, the wood and earth elements will become stronger, the jowls will improve, and you'll feel better as a person. All right, y'all. Take care.